She-Hulk is getting pounded on the review sites. The producers of She-Hulk Attorney at Law are complaining about getting review bombed. But are the bad reviews warranted? As with all things, it's much more complicated. I've largely stayed away from reviewing the latest slew of Marvel TV shows because, well, they're not really any good. But I'm jumping into the fray now because, as you've noticed, I'm tired of bad cinema. I'm tired of bad writing, I'm tired of the messaging, and Marvel, and especially Disney, are the worst offenders here by far. But now let's give a little credit where it's due. Marvel knocked it out of the ballpark by creating the MCU initially. They had a long-term plan and executed it flawlessly, but they had no plan for victory. They had no clue what to do once they won, which brings us neatly along to the multiverse saga. Phase 4 has felt completely directionless through each and every film released thus far. In my earlier reviews for Thor: Love and Blunder and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of No Madness, I outlined this lack of direction. By this stage in Phase 1, we knew where the story was going and the rest was just setup. But Phase 4 gave us a half-assed introduction to Kang the Conqueror rather than carefully and methodically setting him up like they set up Thanos. The shows haven't been any better either. Each show felt rushed and low effort. But could She-Hulk turn the tide? Is it really as bad as everyone is saying? Let's find out, shall we? The first 2 episodes were entirely different from one another in almost every way. The first episode began as every other MCU had so far, by tearing down established, as well as supporting male characters every chance it got and spreading the message of fourth wave feminism. This is not the way to endear yourself to new viewers and is very off-putting to returning viewers. They're tearing down characters the audience grew to love over the past decade. In one scene, Jennifer Walters insinuates that Steve Rogers was a virgin throughout his life. By focusing on one insignificant flaw, she is negating years of pain and sacrifice Captain America put in to save the world countless times. Bruce Banner is obviously uncomfortable with bad-mouthing his, quote, friend and colleague, yet she continues berating Rogers until she crashes her car. She reminds me of that annoying kid in class who just kept running his mouth until someone punched him in the face. She seems to be completely blind to everything around her, a key quality of self-centered people. Is this the kind of message we want to be sending to society, or even to children? The second episode seemed to tone down the raging fourth wave feminist messaging and actually gave us some plot. Here we see Walters getting a new job in corporate law defending superpowered people, and her first client was revealed to be Emil Blonsky, aka the Abomination from the original Hulk movie. I thought it was a nice touch to bring back the character from a forgotten MCU movie, so I'll give them credit for that. Jennifer's struggle with whether to represent him was something that could have been fleshed out better. She calls Banner to gloat rather than to ask for advice, and Hulk says they're reconciled because I guess the script needs him to? This is an example of clunky writing. Script conveniences take the viewer out of the show or movie and just detract from the overall experience. One positive is that Tatiana Maslany is not nearly as annoying as I thought she was going to be. She seems to be a capable actress and doesn't seem to be responsible for the bad script she's gotten. Her breaking the fourth wall was a staple in the comics, much in the same vein as Deadpool. However, the thing that ruins breaking the fourth wall is preaching. Jennifer Walters preaches at the audience rather than making the funny quips and observations she had in the comics. Hearing about how she has it so much worse than men is downright gagging.
Competent men explain my own area of expertise to me. I do it pretty much every day because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult or I might just literally get murdered. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you.
Much like fourth wave feminism, it's entirely tone deaf. Most people who are in prison, likely to be homeless, die in wars, or be victims of violent crime are men. So I'm not sure how she gets off complaining about her having it worse. What world does she live in?
What world do you live in?
Is she hearing herself? Moreover, there are much worse problems in the world than minute annoyances she spends most of the episode whining about. War, famine, corruption, economic strife. I mean, come on, get over yourself, lady. Another example of her self-centered narcissism is her blatant dismissal of Bruce's offer to help her with her new condition. He mentions that he's had 15 years to learn to deal with being a Hulk and wants to impart his knowledge and experience. She dismisses him and just assumes she knows everything. This is a sign of immaturity, which I assume stems from immature writers. This is why audiences seem to review bomb characters like She-Hulk, Captain Marvel, and Rey from Star Wars. They're infallible Mary Sue characters with no problems, issues, or flaws, and high levels of chi and general awesomeness. They don't have to undergo any struggle, and people can't relate to someone like that because it's entirely not a human experience. Every living being undergoes struggle in order to grow and mature. Without struggle or overcoming some challenge, no one can grow. This is a key principle modern writers just don't seem to understand, nor do they make any effort to. You're getting these self-centered, narcissistic characters because they were written by self-centered narcissists. The writers admitted in several interviews they knew nothing about writing courtroom dramas or comedies, and it clearly shows. By now, courtroom shows have been done to death for decades, so it's extremely difficult to do anything new or innovative. Better Call Saul's success as a courtroom drama was largely due to its riding on the coattails of a much more popular show. It had a very popular and likable character in Saul Goodman, and it showed his struggles to overcome his dismissive and abusive family members. Better Call Saul was a slow burn that took its time to flesh out characters' flaws, struggles, and desires. She-Hulk may have had that same advantage of riding on the coattails of the MCU, but it has largely squandered that advantage through bad writing. What made the Netflix MCU shows like Daredevil so good is that the writers took their time in fleshing out the character. We didn't even see Kingpin until later in the season. The writers of Daredevil were much more careful and methodical with their intellectual property. Disney seems to be breaking everything it touches. This pisses me off personally because I'm a stockholder. I bought stock in Disney because I saw the vast potential in their massive library of characters and stories, but they don't seem to value the treasure trove that they have. It seems that Disney ran out of creative juice back in the 90s with Lion King and has been riding on acquisitions like Pixar, Star Wars, and Marvel, but they don't seem to want to continue or improve those stories. They seem intent on destroying all their possessions like a drunken pyromaniac with a bucket of gasoline. This is why review bombs are happening. Audiences legitimately voice their dislike of the show with many logical arguments, but instead of absorbing criticism and improving their material, they pout like a spoiled child and blame the audience by calling them racist, bigots, and misogynists. What business can survive such poor customer service? How long will people sit there taking insults before they say enough and move on? And Disney better be careful because competing material is already arising with the likes of the Rippaverse, a company that actually gives its audience what it wants. Overall, She-Hulk is a character in a story with a lot of potential. Her comics were wildly popular in the late 80s and early 90s. However, the show writers haven't made the effort to even read the source material or effectively learn about courtroom shows. It's lazy, immature, and downright dumb. While the first episode was nearly unbearable, the second episode showed there could be hope yet for this character. But the writers really need to step up their game. This feels like a project someone did out of high school and not a competent professional writer that gives the audience satisfaction and wow factor. The most basic lesson you learn even in middle school English class is show, don't tell. And the writers are telling the audience how awesome their character is and not allowing the audience to form their own opinion. Through good writing, every single audience member will reach consensus through their own individual opinion. They need to do what the producers of the Sonic the Hedgehog movies did. They took criticism, improved their character, and profited from great box office results when they gave the audience something they wanted, not something they forced upon them. Time will tell if Marvel learns from its mistakes. Hopefully new leadership at Disney can turn the ship before it hits the iceberg. If you like this video, hit that like button and subscribe for more great content.